Welcome to the co-luminate Google Drive training. We'll be talking about why we're using Google Drive, which is mainly because of its features, how to set it up and get it working for you, and how we can use Google Drive every day. So to start out, please open up the Google Drive training outline. This should have already been shared with you, and I'm going to request that if you have any questions, you ask them via comments here. So you're welcome to ask questions about specific sections by adding a comment, or if no section applies, you can add it to other questions. The great thing about comments is that once they're asked, somebody can reply and, if necessary, resolve the question. So we're going to move on to basic features. The excellent part with Google Drive, and the reason that we're using it, is because it's fantastic cloud storage. That means that no matter what device you're using, you have access to all the same files. And that applies for individuals with multiple devices, as well as team members across each of their individual devices. So the great thing is you're never going to have to worry, oh, did I get that file on the USB stick? Or, oh, I need to wait for this person to reply to share that with me, because as long as we have everything set up properly, everybody should have access to all the files they need at all times, provided they have internet. Additionally, the functionality of Google Drive is pretty impressive. For instance, there are apps that mirror Microsoft's Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and additionally, it integrates with a number of other services such as Trello or API-based Exchange services, as well as Google's other apps, including Calendar and Gmail. So additionally, it's excellent for collaborative editing. For instance, you can see that when we were working on this meeting, there were lots of people that were all involved in the same document, taking different notes and being able to add comments if they wanted to, have conversations. So it's very flexible as to how you want to use it. It also automatically tracks changes. If you check the revision history, you can see all the changes that were made and restore the previous version. There's also an excellent trash can for when things are deleted. They're not really deleted unless you actually delete them forever. So it kind of keeps a running backup, and they don't take up too much space, so that's good. Additionally, it allows for multiple account support. And this is an impressive feature. So here I'm using my co-luminate account, but I may also be able to use my personal Gmail account. And whether you decide to use your personal account to receive and send email, which you can do, I have a couple accounts set up. It automatically has my signature for different accounts. I also receive my co-luminate email to this account, but I can also receive it and switch between my co-luminate account very easily. This becomes more important when you're using Google Drive. It's just as easy to switch between accounts, but there's a large advantage to using your Google Drive, your co-luminate account with Google Drive. And we'll talk more about that later. So again, these features are useful when you're looking at meeting agendas or if you're working with graphic design. So the example there is if you need to have access to all of these logo files, you can have them automatically sync through the Google Drive folder, of the Google Drive program. Additionally, for volunteer management, you can share files with specific individuals that they might need access to without having to share everything. And finally, decentralized file storage, we've already talked about. So next, we'll talk about getting it working. So for one, we have the question of which account to use. I would highly recommend, for simplicity's sake, that everybody use their co-luminate account when they access Google Drive. So if you want to set it up to use another account, that is possible, but I don't recommend it because it's very important that the ownership of specific files be your co-luminate account, not your personal account, because it's not possible to change the ownership of a file that is outside of the co-luminate domain. You can see here it's owned by my personal account, and it's not possible to transfer that ownership. So in order to avoid needing to do that, it's best to just use your co-luminate account directly. Especially when creating files. So when you need to add folders or share things to your Google Drive account, you can see that in the Shared With Me section, notice two sections, My Drive, which has a folder structure, and Shared With Me. So this Shared With Me section is for everything that's shared with you through another account. It does not automatically appear in your Google Drive. I have already added most of these to some place in my Google Drive. So if you want to add something to your Google Drive, you can click on it or them and click Add to My Drive. You can see it's already added, or you can add it to a specific place. I'm going to add it to this folder, which is not shared with anybody because this is ultra sensitive. So with that in mind, it's good to know whether something is shared or not, and be aware of the permissions that you're giving. So if you're sharing a folder like BizDev, everything in that folder will also be shared. This is indicated by the share picture within the folder. You'll notice that this folder doesn't have any sharing permissions, and if we check the sharing, we can also see it's only accessible by myself. Now, folders inside of an unshared, so files inside of an unshared folder can be shared with other people. Similarly, files and folders which are shared with other people will be accessible by other people. So when you're sharing things, it's important to realize what's inside of that folder and how you're sharing it. Which brings us to permissions. You can change who has access by changing the overall permissions and sharing with only specific people with the co-luminate domain, which is anybody with the co-luminate.com email address, or anyone with a link, or public on the web. I don't recommend sharing public on the web. It's searchable by Google. I also don't recommend using anyone with a link if the document has sensitive information. For non-sensitive information, anyone with a link is a convenient way to share it without having to worry about providing permission for something later if somebody accesses through another account or needs to share it with somebody else. But only use it for non-sensitive information. The next question is whether or not you need to have the software installed. If you're doing graphic design, it can be really helpful to install this software. because then you have all of the files already automatically synced with your computer. Otherwise, the process involves manually dragging and dropping individual files in order to share them, which is a little bit more cumbersome. But if you're only going to be editing some files here and there, and you're not doing something like graphic design, the simple answer is you can use the web interface through your browser to share files simply by navigating to the appropriate folder and dragging and dropping the file into the folder. So now we're going to talk about specifically how we'll be using Google Drive. One thing is receiving files. So when you receive files, you might do that through Trello, and files can very easily be attached through Google Drive by searching, or they can be attached by pasting a link. If you'd like to share an individual file, you can go to the Share folder and copy the link to share and paste it right in there, and it'll get shared. Additionally, you can email a file and add a message. And then that email will be received, and they can jump straight to the document. So there are a number of ways that you can receive and share files: email, Trello, and also simply sharing a folder. If you have a folder shared in your document, shared in your Google Drive, then any changes that you make to that folder will automatically be propagated to everybody else who has access to that folder. So there's no need to manually share any files if everybody who has that folder knows where it is and has it shared. Another excellent feature is simultaneous editing. So we can have multiple users, and they'll all show up right here if we had more people in here, editing a document and commenting it at any one time. You can also view track changes and revert if necessary. Additionally, there's a bunch of awesome features that you can add to Google Apps to make them more functional, such as charts or translate or all sorts of other things. So if you have any questions, be sure to add a comment on this document and I'll get back to you. We can set up a time if we need to sit down together to work out any details.